Hi guys, Ray here from City Fan TV, and I'm joined by football finance expert Colin Savage. How are you doing, Colin?
Great, thanks, Ray. How are you?
I'm very, very good indeed. City through to the next round of the Carabao Cup.
So many, all the big London teams going out. I mean, they've only got one big London team left in, and they're playing Aston Villa tonight, aren't they?
That's the second London team. We've got Charlton. Charlton are still in it. Let's give them. Let's cheer on Charlton. So we're going to talk about something financial today with Colin, because obviously he's a finance expert and that's what he's on the show for. We're going to talk about sponsorship. Now, we had the City's accounts came out on Monday. Record figures left, right and centre. One of the record numbers was sponsorship, where we had over £300 million in sponsorship or commercial income, which is the highest ever in the Premier League, not just for City, for anybody. And that includes Man United, Liverpool, Arsenal, and everybody else. Now, we get this thrown at us all the time about the legitimacy of the sponsorship deals that City signs. There are several companies based in Abu Dhabi who sponsor City. But I'm going to say this up front. They've got to be at fair value. So if they're not at fair value, UEFA wouldn't allow them. And, someone might say it's worth 20 million. If UEFA say it's worth 10 million, then for financial fair play purposes, they'll only give us that 10 million. So we'll get that out up front and centre first, because our accounts are audited by professional auditors, some of the top companies in the world. And then we've got UEFA looking over our shoulders, and the Premier League. So there is some genuine legitimacy to all this. But I'm going to ask you for your opinion, Colin, as to, I was going to use the word legitimate again, but most of the income, I'd say, is fair and above board, and you can see it quite plainly. How do you look at that 307 million pounds that we got in commercial income?
Well, for a start, nearly half of it is probably Puma and Etihad. So people always forget about Puma, probably the biggest single source of commercial income, probably close to a quarter of that figure. And I don't think anyone can reasonably argue that Puma or an Abu Dhabi owned company, although someone did say Puma opened a store in Dubai 2 years ago, and then they started sponsoring City for 70 million. Coincidence? Well, yeah, coincidence.
The Puma deal, I think, is worth 65 million pounds to the CFG.
That's 70 million, yeah. Now, Etihad's probably worth just under that.
Yeah, but I've got to say, I talked about fair value, and it is. People say, "Oh no, it's too much." Other people aren't getting as much, or the Etihad's shirt deal is too much compared to what other clubs get. But these are at fair value. They've been looked at by our auditors and UEFA as well, and they say these are fair values on the open market with maybe someone else. This is what City could achieve.
So yes, that's a great point. And people forget that the Etihad sponsorship doesn't just cover the shirt; it covers the stadium and the campus, of course. So let's say it's 65 million, it's 45 million for the shirt, it's 10 million for the stadium, 10 million for the campus, or whatever. And 45 million for a shirt sponsorship is totally in line with what other clubs are getting, or the big clubs are getting. People often say, well, City are a small club with no fans. How can they get big sponsorship? It's not about having the fans. It's about having the exposure. We've said this before. We've been in the Champions League now 11 seasons running. We've been Premier League champions. We're probably one of the fastest growing clubs in terms of international awareness, in terms of picking up new fans that has ever been. Well, certainly are at the moment. And it's about that exposure. Everyone wants, it's like the supermarket. You go in the supermarket and you go down the shelves. There's some stuff on the bottom shelf, some stuff on the top shelf, some stuff in the middle. Suppliers pay for that placement. I work for a big retail group. You can get money off suppliers to have that shelf, have their product at eye level, because it's more. People are looking at it. People are looking at us more. I say the growth in awareness, the growth in the number of fans. Doing City Matters, I always used to sit next to Kevin Barker, and Kevin was always like sorting out 3 or 4 new official supporters club branches. One in last time I saw it was Mongolia. Yeah, we got support. no one would have, no one, apart from an expat, no one prior to 2012 even would have been City supporting in Mongolia. We've got one in Berlin. The growth in awareness of City is absolutely huge. We are becoming that big club. Doesn't matter how many fans we've got, and that's completely subjective anyway.
Yeah.
So that's one reason why we're an attractive commercial proposition. And I say that so Etihad and Puma are probably close to half of that total. And of course, it doesn't. Then there's merchandise. We probably sell a lot of merchandise, which the shirt argument is always a bit of a specious one because of the nature of the contract. Basically, you get a fixed fee up to a certain amount. So anything you sell over a certain amount, it might be, for example, 1 million shirts a year. And anything we sell over 1 million, we might get an extra 10% of the headline price. So forget the shirt argument. Who's buying such a shirt? It doesn't matter. We've got that deal with Puma, and they will pay us a fixed fee plus a percentage for any excess sales. So we've also other branded merchandise and leisure wear and stuff like that, and that was bringing a lot of money. Then there's concerts. Now, typically, I think we could probably get about 5 million for putting on 3 to 5 million, something like that, for putting on one concert at the Etihad, which is why your tickets are so expensive, of course. So if you think, we have 4 or 5 concerts, that's another 15 million, maybe more. There's all sorts of other stuff going on there. So, and people talk about Abu Dhabi. It's all from Abu Dhabi. Well, it's not all from Abu Dhabi because, I say, we talked about Puma, we talked about concerts, we talked about leisure wear. But yes, there are some of that, Etihad. But when you've got an owner who's a member of the Abu Dhabi royal family, why wouldn't you want to highlight your country? Yeah. And we know from the Kaz case that the Abu Dhabi government was helping Etihad with the sponsorship. But of course, people make the link say, you must be state-owned. But no, the government want to position Etihad as a global carrier, and they're paying from central funds. They're paying part of Etihad marketing effort from central funds. You can take whatever view on that you like, but Kaz found it okay. And the other thing to note, as you said before, was when we had the initial discussions with UEFA back in 2014, they looked at our Abu Dhabi-based sponsors, and obviously Etihad was the main one. And they tried to position it as a related party, which is, it's not I guess it's meant to be an objective. Yeah. There are rules around, accounting-based rules around who's a related party, but they're not exhaustive. They're not black and white. So it's probably about 75% objective, 25% subjective. So that's where there's room for disagreement. But the rules on the sort of tests you should apply weren't met. And UEFA's auditors tried to argue they were, we tried to argue they weren't. But whatever happens, UEFA broadly agreed that the Etihad sponsorship was fair value. And so, and Kaz came out and said in black and white, no reason to think that it didn't represent. Well, I can't think. I was having this argument with someone on Twitter. Yeah. Why bother arguing with these idiots? I must have been bored and feeling a bit of a fractious mood. But Kaz came out, said it in black and white, that Etihad paid market value and they got full value for that sponsorship.
Yeah. We still get, we're talking about something that happened nearly 10 years ago. The deal. But briefly, that was a £400 million deal over 10 years, which included the stadium, which was allegedly, the academy, which is allegedly 100 million out of that 400, shirt deal, and the naming rights. Now, going back to that time, I remember the people talking about the shirt deal being worth 25 million and the naming rights being worth 5 million. It's a 10-year deal, And actually, people say that's too much for a club that's not won anything. But big companies want to back winners, and they also want to back potential. And anybody could see the potential of Man City with the backers they had, what they were doing, the waves they were making, that these numbers were quite reasonable. And I said it back when that deal came out. these numbers look reasonable compared to Liverpool, Man United, and everybody else.
You've got not aligned in any way, shape, or form.
Absolutely. And you've got a situation where Newcastle are talking about a £300 million 10-year deal on their naming rights, and City is much less, I think, or of a similar nature. And City have been winning stuff left, right, and centre. So it's always been market value. And if they weren't market value, would have been knocked back by our auditors and the UEFA.
I was going to say that we've got a lot of other sponsors, and some of those are Abu Dhabi related, some of which Nestle aren't.
I've got a list of them all. I've got a spreadsheet of all the non-Abu Dhabi ones.
The thing is, there were some, obviously, Abu Dhabi other sponsors. Arbar still on there, Etisalat, the Tourist Authority, one or two others.
Yeah.
And we're owned by an Abu Dhabi sheikh. Of course, the companies are going to build on that. They want global exposure, and what better way? We know Abu Dhabi's quite proactive in being a global trading hub. Why wouldn't you advertise?
Yeah. There's two things. One, we can leverage our relationship with them or with other companies to get them on board, and also there's others that want to be on board because they can see where City's going. Etisalat have been with us since the start. Yes. Then, around the world, maybe not as prominent amongst non-City fans, but it's been there at the forefront for over 10 years as City have developed, and they will be getting some advantage from it.
Premier League teams, and we'll see Etisalat, advertise. Now, there's another level to this. This is an interesting one because we say Hayes is a good example. Nissan's another good example. That there are companies where they have business connections in Abu Dhabi, and almost it's like, well, if you want to do business here, the price.
Yeah.
Which is a bit cynical, but I know Hayes are closely connected with the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company. They do all the recruitment. I think we've got global Mubadala.
Yeah.
Got global. That's the Abu Dhabi Wealth Fund. Have got global partnerships with Nissan and other companies. So Xylem, the water company. They might not come to us without the Abu Dhabi connection. My answer, probably not. But that's the genius of our business model, is that we can leverage global business connections to produce sponsorships for Manchester City. If you think that's dodgy, it's you go back to Liverpool. They got this cracking kit deal from Warrior, who are part of the New Balance group, for their kit a good few years ago. Warrior were a Boston-based company, friendly with the owners of Liverpool. Adidas, I think it was, walked away from the deal because they said it was far too high for what Liverpool were expecting. Now, Adidas know value. So, how is that not a bit dodgy in some ways? Basically, you've given your mates a deal to get them into the market. And funnily enough, Warrior couldn't actually couldn't really fulfill the contract properly. Didn't have the distribution network. Liverpool ditched them. It was a big legal case, and they went to, I'm not sure who they're with at the moment.
Nike.
Doesn't matter. But Nike, I think they're with.
Yeah.
So, and they never made it in the football shirt market. They were very much lacrosse and hockey.
Yeah.
So it didn't work for them.
That was. I mean, basically, that deal is your mate's paying over the odds to get into the market when an established player says that's too much. There's nothing wrong with that.
Because if Warriors say come to City and say we want to do your kit, we'd have probably asked them, what can you do for us? What can you do for us that Puma or Adidas or Umbro or Nike can't do? And we'd have probably looked questioningly at that deal. Anyway, that's another thing.
Advantage of this situation. That's the whole point. It's business. We take advantage of the opportunity.
We've taken advantage of opportunities. And a lot of those opportunities have been presented by companies who want to do business with, with wealth funds like Mubadala or work in Abu Dhabi. So, they can call it as dodgy as they like.
Yeah,
that's the genius. That's the genius of our business model.
As we draw to an end on this particular video, I've got to ask you: there are there is one particular company, and it's not just City who've been, I think, done by this, but there's a company called, a betting company called 8xBet. I think that's the one where people have said, they've got this deal with City. There's nothing you can find about this company. It's meant to promote betting in the Asian markets. On Twitter, they've got, I think, their official Twitter account has got 54 followers. There's, people said there was the CEO or one of the executives, when they tried to find out a bit more about them, they'd use a stock photograph of somebody else. It doesn't look good. But other clubs have got betting partners that don't look good either.
It doesn't look good, does it? But, you do wonder why a club is advertising or sponsoring us and then hiding away. The CEO is entitled to privacy. They don't have to have social media account. A lot of these are what they call white label companies, which are either part of there's a bigger company behind them and they just pick that up, or they are the white label, so they are the platform for a number of better. We don't know. The club isn't clear, as you say. It doesn't look good, but it's funny that people like Philip O'Clair is always banging this drum. Doesn't bang the drum for other clubs.
Yeah, there was one last week.
Have similar arrangements.
There was one last week that they pulled out of the contract with I can't remember the club now, Premier League club, pulled out of that contract because the sponsor was basically kind of up in the air,
We talked about UEFA before. One thing we didn't mention was all new deals have to be over £1 million per annum, have to be sanctioned by UEFA.
Yeah.
So either this deal is less than £1 million, which means it's insignificant, or it's £1 million or more, and UEFA have sanctioned it.
I'm going to give people, to finish off, a very quick rundown of companies that I do not believe are Abu Dhabi sponsors of City. It's not going to take me too long, but there's about 30 of them. Puma, OKX, Nexentai, Nissan, Midea, EA Sports, Cisco, Asahi, Wix, QNet, Socios, Unilever, Axe, JLM, Xylem, Hayes, Sony, Gatorade, Unilumin, D2, Acronis, Qualtrics, Therabody, Recast, WeWork, SCM, Leo Vegas, 8xBet, Khmer Beverages, Sportium, Nestle, Beam Consulting, Animoca Brands, Dream Set Go, Dude Wipes, Sports Interactive. There's about 30 companies there, nothing to do with City. Some big names like Nestle and Unilever, Puma, Nexen, Nissan. They want to be, basically backing winners. They want to be associated with a winning organization.
Maybe they're doing business in Abu Dhabi, but so what? They're not Abu Dhabi-owned companies. No one can force them to do it.
Yeah.
But I say that's the great thing about our business model, is that we can leverage those sort of relationships outside. Think about going back to Main Road, and there were all these, adverts. How many of those were mates of Peter Swales, for example, or
Peter Swales saw Man City as an opportunity to obviously amongst footballers and also promote his businesses.
So as we said, the auditors are looking at it. UEFA are looking at it. We're probably the club that's been under the most scrutiny of any other club. And while some of those Asian betting companies, some of them don't look great, the overwhelming majority of our sponsorships are completely legitimate.
Fantastic, Colin. Thank you so much for that insight again on sponsorship at Manchester City, and we'll see you again soon.
Always good to try and put the record straight.